Okay, so now we're going to move on to the rest of this problem, and there are three journal entries that we need to make. And according to the instructions, we are going to journalize the payroll register, journalize the employer's tax liability, and journalize the payment of payroll taxes in the next month. Okay, so what I'm going to do is pull this up side by side so hopefully we can see where these numbers are coming from. I'll try to highlight them as I go. I know this isn't the super best way to do this, but it is what we have. So I'm going to zoom out of this a little bit. Okay, so in order to journalize this, first I have to go through and journalize the gross wages. So this is how much I am going to pay my employees, but not actually how much their paychecks are. So this is what I refer to as the employee journal entry. So what I do is I start by getting my gross wages on my books. So this is how much their total paycheck was, and then that's the amount that's going to go as an expense on my income statement. So here I'm going to take office expense, office wage expense, and production wage expense, and those are going to be my debits. Office wage expense of 20920, and then production wage expense. This is the total amount that I would have paid my employees, but that's not the actual amount of their paychecks because we had stuff withheld. So then I have to go through and I have to journalize all these deductions right here. All these deductions right here. And those are credits. They are liabilities. And they are liabilities because I owe this money to someone else. Whatever government agency. So for instance, these are to the IRS. Sorry about that, I was trying to fix the formatting. So I just did FICA OASDI, and now I'm going to do FICA Medicare. OASDI is Social Security, and I just go through and I calculate 94.96. FIT payable. Oh, I forgot my payable after here. These are all payables because I owe them. I'm just holding on to them for a little bit. I don't get to withhold all of this from my employee's paycheck and then pocket it. It doesn't work that way. These are liabilities on my balance sheet because I've agreed to pay them later. My last one, union dues. My last one, if I were to add this up, add up my debits and credits, they don't match. They just don't match at all. So my salaries payable is going to match my net check. This is how much I am going to write out of my checking account at some point for my employees' paychecks. Rarely, this journal entry is done on the day that I calculate my payroll. Rarely do I calculate my payroll and pay my employees in the same day. There's usually a couple of day lag in there. So I haven't actually paid my employees, but I owe it to them, so I have to put it on my books as a payable. Okay, but on the same day, I also have to record all of my employer payroll taxes. Employer payroll taxes. So I go over here, and all of those are going to go to a payroll tax expense account. I don't know what my total expense is yet, so I'm going to go ahead and skip that debit. And then I'm going to go and list my credits. As I mentioned before, I have to match dollar for dollar. I have to match dollar for dollar the amount that is owed for Social Security and Medicare. So I just pick those numbers right up and just stick them right in this journal entry. Now, employers do not match fit and sit. But as you recall, I said that we are responsible for FUTA tax and we are responsible for SUTA tax. We are responsible for both of those taxes. So what we do, the taxes, SUTA and FUTA, are not actually listed on our payroll register. I kind of wish they were, but they're not. So what we do is we go over here and we find the column on our worksheet on our payroll register that says how much of our total gross wages was taxable for FUTA and SUTA purposes. So right here I say that $880 is taxable for FUTA and SUTA purposes. I then go over and I find my FUTA and SUTA rates. So for example, it tells me for SUTA that $880, we already calculated $880 is taxable, and I'm going to multiply that by the SUTA rate of 5%. And when I do that, I am going to get $4, or excuse me, $44. And then I have to calculate my FUTA tax, and it's still this $880. This is how much of our gross wages was taxable for FUTA and SUTA purposes. And I'm going to multiply that by 0.6%. Be sure you're not doing 6% or your decimal will be all off and messed up. It's 0.6%, or as a decimal it's 0.006. This is a super common error. So I have to go through and I calculate those. Again, they're not on my payroll register. I can then go back and I can stick those into this journal entry. And, I put, nope, SUTA is $5. And so there, this is record employer payroll tax expense. But my journal entry isn't done. I am missing a debit. And so what I do is I just go through and add those numbers up and I get $550.36. Okay. Now, and this isn't in the instructions, I accidentally forgot it, but I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate it. Let's say on the 10th we actually pay our employees. We're going to actually write out the payroll checks. So here we know we owe them $4,748 is payable. To clear this payable, I'm going to debit $4,748.43, and the other part goes to cash. Again, I forgot to put that in the instructions. You will need to know that for the project coming up, so you might want to practice it on the other journal entries. Okay, last journal entry. So I now have withheld this out of my paycheck. I put on my books that I have matched some things, or that I have paid some additional, or I need to pay some additional taxes to FUTA and SUTA. And so now I have to record the journal entries to pay the payroll tax. In most cases, the payroll taxes are due on the 15th of next month. So on January 15th, I'm going to do a January and 15. I have to pay my payroll taxes. And so I start just clearing out these payables. I have FICA, OASDI, tax payable. It was a credit, and now to clear it out it is a debit. But what I want to point out is you have 40610 and 40610. I have to add those two together. This would be the amount that is in my ledger that needs to be paid. So I'm going to take 40610, I'm going to add it together, and I am going to 812.20. And I'm on the wrong line, I apologize. And then I have to also pay my Medicare at the same time. Again, I have two entries. I have one right here and another 94.96 right here. Okay, so I have 94.96. I double that because that would be the amount that was in my ledger that needs to be paid. Okay. And I also, at the same time that I pay Social Security and Medicare to the IRS, I pay my FIT. But if you'll notice right here, there's only one FIT, so I just pick that number up. I don't double it. It's really tempting to double it because you're like, oh, I got it. Nope, nope, nope. Just add up what is there. Okay. And then that is it. That's all I pay in this one. The reason that is I have to write a check to the IRS. Okay. But now you're saying, but wait a second, SIT still hasn't been paid. Those are usually due on the 20th of the next month. And so I'm going to have a SIT payable. So then I can clear out that payable. I'm going to write them a check for the amount withheld out of my employees' paychecks. And I do this same process when my union dues were due. Normally, we don't pay those until like quarterly. So we would accumulate all of those and then pay it quarterly. FUTA and SUTA, usually SUTA is due at the 30th. So all of this was like January 15th, 20th. We're paying them the next month. I owe $5.28. And my credits to cash because I'm actually writing them a check. And FUTA also is one of those that is due quarterly. And so we wouldn't pay them right now. We wouldn't pay them until later. We would accumulate it for an entire quarter and then pay it. So that right there is the journal entries for payroll. Please, 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 if you have any questions about this, you need to ask me because you will have to do this on your final project. Okay, so now I want to cover the last part, the last little bit of the demonstration problem. Here, I'm going to pull it up. Okay, so here is what I want to do on this problem. So let's say somebody's already gone through and done the trial balance for the previous month. And now I am in the next month. So I'm going to say this is January. And now it is February. And a lot of transactions have happened since then. I did January payroll a long time ago. So I need to go in and pay my payroll taxes. It's now February and it's February 15th. And I need to pay my payroll taxes. Well, this is a trial balance. And this is where all of the balances from the previous month have been accumulated. So if I say, hey, I need to go pay my payroll taxes from the previous month, all I have to do is go over here and look over here and say, okay, well, I already know the balances in the account, so I'm just going to go ahead and pay them. So for example, I would use the same accounts that I just used in the previous problem. In fact, I am going to cheat and I'm just going to copy and paste these. Oh, copied and pasted the wrong ones. How about I do the right ones? That would be super helpful. Again, let me start over. I'm going to pay my payroll taxes from the previous month. So on your project, one of the things that it's going to say is on February 15th, pay your payroll taxes from the previous month. So I will have a trial balance from the previous month and I just go through and I just pick up these amounts of what was paid. There's no new calculation. You just pick up the account balances and say, okay, so, and this actually has Social Security payable. In fact, it should say OASDI payable, but we're going to go with it. And Medicare tax payable is 112, and fit is 1,000. And then cash, I just have to add these up. That should say 112. So I'm going to write a check for 1,566. The whole point of this exercise is to show you that you can, if you have a trial balance, you can just pay the payroll taxes from the previous month by just looking up the balances and moving on. Some students on the project are like, well, it's asking me to pay the ones from the previous month and I don't know where to find them. Use a trial balance from the previous month. Don't try to go through and recalculate anything. Oh, and this one, we didn't have any SIT payable. I was just going to demonstrate how to do the SIT payable, but we don't have any. Oh wait, we do. 190. Sorry about that. So one of the problems on your project is pay the payroll taxes from the previous month. I know I keep repeating myself, but this is really where students get hung up on the couple of places they get hung up on the project. And so I want to make sure that you are well aware of how to do this. And then I would just pay SIT from previous month, or pay SIT from that was withheld in previous months. Okay, so that is all of the content that you need from chapters 7 and 8. You can use a textbook as reference. Like I said, it's not written all that great, but chapter 7 is better than chapter 8, so it will definitely talk to you about how to do the journal entries and how to do the payroll register if you have any questions about that. Now, you don't have check my work, and that can be a little bit frustrating when you're learning something new, especially where you've come to depend on it all semester. What's going to happen is this isn't going to be like an all or nothing chapter. If you submit it and there's still mistakes, I am going to give you feedback and hand it back to you and ask you to correct it. And the reason I'm going to ask you to correct it is you absolutely 100% have to be able to do this for your project. So any score that I put in will be a tentative score, and then we can keep corresponding back and forth. So this may be a 2 or 3 times through before you pick up the correct answers. So don't worry about it. So again, you are going to complete problem 7A2, 7A3, and then one of these demonstration problems where you're paying the payroll taxes from the previous month. Now I want to go over specific things for each of these problems that you're going to do. Brent Barr right here is just about ready to hit the limit of Social Security. So you need to figure out what you need to do with that, because he's not paying Social Security on this the entire $2,080. So somehow make a note of that as you're working through that he is nearly at this $17,000 limit. He only pays taxes until he hits that limit. Okay. This problem right here. Next one. You need to add these up and see if you need to pay any overtime. Because you have to do time and a half if you need to work on, or excuse me, if there are any overtime that needs to be paid. Sorry, that made no sense at all. Let's try that again. If he needs to be paid overtime, it will be if they've worked more than 40 hours in a week. Pages 240 and 241 in your textbook do an excellent job of describing how to calculate overtime, so be aware of that. Make a note as you're working through there that there may be some overtime. Thank you for hanging in there. Sorry that there's 40 minutes of lecture, but again, I think I can pull that off because you don't have tons of homework this week. I look forward to seeing your work. The earlier you get it turned in, the earlier I can get comments to you, and we can do this kind of back and forth. I can't stress enough, you absolutely 100% have to be able to do payroll in order to do your final project. If you can't do these payroll registers, you'll never ever be able to successfully complete your final project. I look forward to working with you, and I look forward to seeing all your final projects coming up soon. Hope you have a great week.